Hey everybody, Dr. Nicole here with eSleep Wellness, here with another sleep tip. So, well, happy February and happy Monday. I thought since we're in a new month and starting a new week that we could kind of switch topics. We spent a while talking about melatonin and the light-dark cycle. And I thought it would be good to mix it up and throw some other stuff in there. So you may have guessed from previous conversations or from your own experience that what you eat affects how you sleep. So we talked about caffeine and dark chocolate. Those are generally more notable. Definitely the caffeine is. But there are other things that affect our sleep. And today we're going to talk about sugar because it definitely does affect your sleep. So, if you were to have roughly 85 grams of sugar in a day, you are more likely to have shorter sleep, and that would be like 6 hours or less. And if you did better and you had more like 65 grams of sugar in the day, then you are more likely to sleep 8 hours or more. And just for a point of reference, a typical can of Coke, like soda Coke, is about 39-40 grams of sugar. So just so you have like a point of reference of like when I say, 65 or 85 grams of sugar in a day, we all know what generally a soda can is. And so that's about 40 grams. So now there is also a dose response relationship. That means that the more sugar you eat, the more likely it is to affect your sleep and increase the severity of your sleep problems. So we talked about sleep duration, meaning that you were sleeping less or sleeping longer, but it also affects your sleep quality. So if you had the 85 grams of sugar in the day, you are more likely to report not just short sleep, but poor sleep quality than the person who got the 65 grams of sugar in the day. They will report having slept better and feel more refreshed when they wake up. Now, on top of that, it could just be on a given night, let's say, that you had the, sugary day. Maybe it was like you had a birthday party or whatever. It was a reason to celebrate, and so you ate more sugar that day. You are more likely to experience sleep problems that night than on a day when you eat better. And you may or may not have ever noticed the association, but I, challenge you now to pay attention to days that you have better sleep and reflect on how you ate, or through the day realize, oh, this is like, I'm not doing so good with my sugar. And then see how you sleep that night. Now, like I mentioned, it can affect acutely that night, but research also shows that it can be chronic. So if you chronically eat a lot of sugar, you are more likely to develop insomnia. Usually, so research has been over 3 years. So if you generally eat a sugary diet, drink sodas, eat cakes, the very obvious cane sugars, then you over time are more likely to develop insomnia than if you maintain a more balanced diet. Now, I mentioned the obvious sugars like sodas, cake, cookies, like we all know those things. But also be aware that sometimes sugar is hidden in our foods that we don't even realize. So I'm a runner, and I, back when I was young, went to running camp, and in that, they wouldn't let us eat anything that had sugar in the top 5 ingredients. And the one that I always remember from that is ketchup. We weren't allowed to eat ketchup because it had sugar in the first 5 ingredients, and which blew my mind at that time, and so much so that I still remember that to this day. But I tell you that because I want you to know that sometimes things that we think are okay have sugar in them, more sugar than we realize. And so be cognizant of that. Look at your labels and see how much sugar is in something that you're eating. And I mean, it can be in things that you don't expect, like yogurts, crackers, maybe like sauces or tomato sauces or things like that, salad dressing. So just take a look at your labels so that you can find out how much is in there. And then of course, you know, if you don't know, and there is no label, try to look it up, you know, depending on how dedicated you are to trying to get to the root of this, if this is part of your sleep problem. You know, I'm sure Google has the answer to how much sugar is in something, because Google's got the answer to everything. So you could look it up that way if there's no label to tell you. So, you know, be cognizant of that. Now, the other thing that I wanted to add is that, you know, you're paying attention to the sugars that you're eating, and it can be acute or chronic. And so also, you know, if you were to have it close to dinner, or you had a high sugar meal within 4 hours of bedtime, it will affect your propensity to fall asleep. So something we call sleep latency, meaning like how long it takes you to fall asleep. You can reduce your sleep latency, meaning you can fall asleep faster, by 50% if you have a low carbo, low glycemic index meal than if you were to have a high one. And glycemic index really kind of refers to how fast your sugar rises. And you may or may not have heard, but like cane sugars, like we talked, the sodas, the cakes, spike your sugar up fast. It increases it fast, and then you also crash. Whereas those that have a lower glycemic index don't give you that spike. So that will affect, sorry, my kitten is affecting my old cat, and there's a little bit of a tiff over there. But so if you heard growling, that's them getting acquainted. But anyways, that is the situation with sugar. It will affect your sleep duration, how long you sleep. It will affect your sleep quality, and it will affect how fast you can sleep. And it can be either acute, as in like in a particular night, or it can be chronic and it start to affect you over time. You know, if you have one bad day of eating and one bad night of sleep, you know, that doesn't necessarily mean any sort of like long-term effect. But if you continually or habitually eat high sugar meals over the years, roughly 3, you have a much higher odds of developing insomnia. And then that will be harder to untangle. But if you are finding that sugar could potentially be your problem, or you have a suspicion, or you eat a lot of sugar as it is, try doing a few days should already start to give you an impact on how you're feeling. So really be cognizant of how much sugar you're consuming, and then pay attention to how your sleep is impacted by that. Okay, so that's the tip for today. Have a good night.